Hi guys, and welcome to my tutorial on how to make Malevola's tail, but this can also be used just for a general demon tail or tiefling tail tutorial. Unfortunately, this will be in a couple parts, but I will have them all uploaded at the same time, but the full video will be up on my YouTube. So the first thing you're going to need is a pool noodle, and try and find one with the smallest inside hole that you can, so you can carve it really small at the tip. I tried to make this tutorial as easy as possible for people who don't have a lot of access to a lot of different materials. Pool noodles are really easy to find. Kmart has them. I bet a lot of stores you didn't even know would have them, especially during summertime. But basically, the first step is you want to carve this pool noodle into a taper, like shown on the screen. So thick at one end, thin at the other. But don't carve too much, as you don't want to go inside the middle hole. I actually kind of mess up here and I cut too much off and it's in the center hole, but that's fine. And I'm using a box cutter to do this, but please just carve away from yourself. Here's how it should look when you're done carving, nice and smooth-ish and bendy. Now it's time to make a pattern of the beautiful tail you've carved. So cover the whole thing in masking tape. I would not use a stronger tape than that, like duct tape, because it will rip off the pool noodle and tear it apart. So just cover the whole thing in masking tape. Then you're going to want to draw a line straight down the middle. This is where you'll be cutting it. And only do this on one side, so it's just less cutting, less pieces. In order to keep track of where you've cut and what connects together, I recommend doing registration lines, which are these here. Basically, it stops you from gluing it wonky or just lines not matching up. I think I do them here, yes. Look at them registration lines. It just helps heaps. Please do them. Then I'm cutting it out with a box cutter. Please be careful not to go too deep. You just want to cut the tape, just the top surface. Now I'm laying it down on a piece of foam because I'm going to wrap the pool noodle in foam. This is just because I want a smooth, nice finish, and pool noodles are a bit rough on the outside. I'm just cutting it out with scissors because this is only about 2mm foam, so you don't even really need a blade for this. You can still get a clean cut with scissors. Now onto the inner structure. I am weaving two pieces of wire together to make it more stable, but you don't have to do this if you just get a thicker wire. This will go down the inside of our pool noodle, which is why I like using a pool noodle, because it already has the hole inside and you don't need to carve it out. But this will mean we'll be able to bend and pose the tail however we want. Now I'm just wrapping the wire in bubble wrap just so it's not floating in the middle of the pool noodle and it just has something to grip onto the sides. You can use pretty much anything, any trash that you have laying around, just to recycle it, but I had this bubble wrap that I used which I was meaning to get rid of, and I'm just taping it down just so it doesn't unravel when I'm putting it inside and it just stays nice and uniform. Now we will insert the wire structure into the pool noodle, and this will make it so bendable and you'll be able to do any pose you'd like with it. And now we are going to get that piece of foam that we grabbed from before and wrap it around and glue it together. We're not gluing it onto the pool noodle because the reaction of the glue might actually melt it. We're gluing it just to its own surface here. Luckily, because we did a pattern, it's nice and tight and it's going to hold really well. This just makes the tail so much smoother and have such a nicer surface for fabric to go over it. I highly recommend this step, but you don't actually have to do it. You can just leave it as a pool noodle if you don't have access to foam. And here's how it's looking so far. Now we're going to cut an angle on the back of the foam because this is what sits on your back. And if it's flat, it's just going to look weird. So we just cut off an angle, get some wire cutters to cut off any bit of wire. Make sure you fold it in so it doesn't end up poking you in the back later, but see, much better. Now we are going to create the tip of the tail. I just trace the bottom of the tail onto a piece of foam, just so I can get an idea of the size and how big I want the triangle. Then I'll cut it out, and I'll also cut out the base of the triangle, this right here. Do a bevel when you cut these out because it will look so much more seamless when it's put together in the very end, like a nice curved surface rather than just a harsh line edge. So you need two of these just to make that nice little curved surface. Just make sure they are the right size, trim them down if you need to. Now, I use contact cement in order to glue my foam together, just because that is probably the best for EVA foam. If you're using a different material, find out what glue is best and always use a respirator. and proper protection when using this stuff because it is stinky. So yeah, I'm just putting all the glue on all the edges because with contact cement you do need to wait for it to semi-dry before you press the two pieces together. And it will be a bit tricky to get the curve at first when the glue's not fully dry, but you just gotta wait a bit, do one side, then go over and do the other and it'll work out. This is actually going to replace the tip of the tail because how it is looking now is a bit, you know, rough. Now we're doing the pointy tail bit. I don't really know what to call it, but basically this is super simple as well. You just don't want to glue this inner part because that's where you're gonna put the tip of the tail and, you know, you don't want to be cutting that open. I also like to stuff the tail because I just want it to look more puffy. I don't really want it to be like a flat piece, you know. Now I'm attaching the base of the tail to the tail, and yeah, it's a bit tricky, but honestly, you just do the front and the back of the tail base first, and then you wait to do the edges. Now look at that, perfectly puffy and nice looking. I just add more stuffing just because there's nothing else really in there and I don't want it to fall flat. Now you're going to cut off the tip of the tail in order to put that new tip on, and don't worry, you won't really be able to see this if you glue it pretty evenly. Just slather glue all in there just for a really nice fit. Basically, once the fabric's on, you won't even be able to tell that there was a seam line there. And I wasn't really happy with how the curve turned out, so I'm just taking a chunk out of the bottom part of the tail just to re-glue it and have a smoother finish to the tip of the tail. And don't worry about these creases in the tail, it would be natural for a tail to crease when bent, so it looks even more realistic. Now I'm just adding a cap just to seal the wire and all the stuffing that's in the end of the tail and give it a flat base so there's nothing poking through and hurting us. Just slap that on there, trim it. While it's on there, you don't really need to be fully precise, it just needs to be an even surface. But now we're onto the fabric. I originally used white fabric, which I then dyed red, but basically you're going to trace out your pattern pieces that you used for the foam, straight back out onto the fabric. I dyed my fabric, so it took me a bit longer because I just couldn't find the red in a stretch fabric that I wanted. And make sure your fabric is stretch or else it just won't fit over the foam. Then you're just going to sew a tube, and I'm just testing out here if the seam line is good. Don't worry, you trim that down after everything fits. Now I'm sliding it on, and I love this shiny spandex material. It's just perfect for Malevola, perfect for that shiny dragon demon tail. Now with the tip of the tail, I chose to do it separately because I wanted a smoother seam line and I wanted everything to fit perfectly. So once you've done the tube of the tail, then you can sew together the point. And this is very hard to sew this material, so just go slow and use lots of clips and pins. When you're sewing a point, you can just flip up the foot when the needle is in and then create a smoother point. Now flip it inside out. Once you're done sewing, trim the inside seams and you're ready to put it on the tip. And you're probably wondering, well, how are we going to sew the tip back to the base? Well, we're going to hand sew and we're going to do a ladder stitch. So this stitch will hide all the seams and there will be nothing sticking out. I can link a tutorial in the description if you're watching on YouTube to a ladder stitch if you need help with that. But basically you fold both ends and you just sew the inside-ish of the fabric. I'll show a diagram of what I mean. So you're just going to sew all around the base until it's nice and flush. This does obviously leave a seam there, but it's really not that noticeable. And in order to seal it in, I just do a quick little stitch at the end, and it doesn't really matter how it looks since we're going to be putting a felt cover on top. First, we're going to attach string to it though, so we have a way in order to put this on our body. Now, I recommend sewing the string to this felt bit instead of gluing for extra security. But I highly recommend using a fabric glue, not a hot glue, if you're attaching this to the base, because hot glue will come apart. I did add a button to the back of the tail just for extra stability because I had it on the outside of my shorts since I really did not want to poke a hole in my shorts. But yeah, thanks for watching. That's how you make a Malevola tail, and happy crafting!